If you are in a place and you are not allowed to leave, you are being held hostage. I'm sorry. Like, if you are in a train and they will not allow you to leave the train for 30 hours, you are being held hostage. I don't think they could keep me from leaving the train, Buck. What is the Amtrak, like, ticket taker going to put you in a, like, chokehold?
I got to ask you this one too, Clay, because were you ever, you lived in D.C., I was a D.C. guy, but I had to go between D.C. and New York to see family when I was living there, so I would ride Amtrak pretty regularly. I had a car, but so you spent some time on Amtrak. This is one of those things where I see this, because I was on a Metro North train that actually hit a car. I remember that.
Yeah.
And almost derailed. Things happen on trains. Trains are pretty safe, but things happen on trains. I've been on trains where they just say, there's a tree that's blocking the, and they come over and it's super loud, but you can't hear what they're saying, even though it's super loud. And there's a tree that's blocking the pathway or something. And you're like, am I going to be here? How many hours can I be here? Well, we got an estimate for how long this can go. Monday night, an Amtrak train left D.C. on its way to Florida, probably with people who are moving, because it was a car train. So people with their cars. I bet it's some people who are moving to Florida, right? It was the auto train where people have their cars. I didn't even know that
existed.
Yeah, I'd heard of it once or twice before. But they were on Monday night, and this was amazing. They were stuck on this train in between stations, an Amtrak train, for over 30 hours.
Oh, my God.
Over 30 hours. People were calling the police in South Carolina from the woods. They were like out in a rural area calling the police. There's video of this. Calling the police saying Amtrak has kidnapped us. They say it's illegal for us to get off the train. And so they came over the PA and said, please stop calling the police and saying we have kidnapped you. We're trying to get the train moving again. I think there's got to be a rule here. Like, if this is what I want to ask you. If you go more than 12 hours, and they said, by the way, they ran out of food. There was nowhere for dogs to go to the bathroom. People had pets with them on the train. It was a nightmare. At what point do you just hit the emergency exit and you're like, I'm walking through the South Carolina woods? They're lovely this time of year.
I mean, first of all, you can pull up on your phone to know how far it is to, like, a road or whatever else. I know people have been stuck on planes. You can't get off a plane because you're on an active runway. I understand that, although anybody who's ever had to sit on a runway for a long time knows how claustrophobic and infuriating that can be. But I understand why you can't get off there. There's no way I would have stayed on that train 30 hours. I would have just said, I would have
arrest me. I would have said arrest me. I would be hitting the emergency exit.
What are they going to do if you get off the train? The train is stopped. It is in there's tracks. You can walk alongside the tracks. I would have, especially if I had kids. I'm super impatient. I would have said, first of all, I probably wouldn't have been on the train in the first place. Let's start here. I'm impatient enough that I'm not going to sit on a train all the way from,
it was DC a 19-hour, supposed to be a 19-hour train ride.
That's a big train. That's too far of a train ride for me, all right, to start. But if I had been on there after like 7 or 8 hours, now the balancing act there is you never want to wait 8 hours and then it starts in the 9th hour, right? Because then you've waited 8/9 of the time. So you keep convincing yourself, surely it can't be that much longer. But there's no way I would have stayed on that train 30 hours.
It's interesting you brought up planes because they changed the rules. The FAA
had to because of the situation.
Because they had these things where people were having, and I understand. By the way, no judgment here. I would be one of those people on a hot plane on the tarmac where they ran, where they were just giving out bottles of water. They were there for like 6 hours, and people were having nervous breakdowns and freaking out because they're just waiting on the tarmac for 6 hours. So now they have to touch back. I think it's at 3 hours. They have to give you the opportunity to get off. They got to have a similar rule for
30
trains.
hours.
it's got to be like, if we can't get you moving within 2 or 3 hours, you want to get off, we're going to let everybody have the chance to get off. This was crazy. People were calling the police saying they were kidnapped.
Yeah, and I wonder, Buck, how far it was to get to somewhere where you could get a taxi or an Uber or, the South Carolina woods are not exactly where you want to get dropped off. I mean, you don't want to get eaten by an alligator trying to cross a bridge there. But I would have... imagine everybody on that train lost their minds. I don't see how they wouldn't when you were locked in for that long.
Have you ever dreamed of hitting the emergency exit on a plane that was on the tarmac and jumping on that slide and running to freedom? I've dreamed of it.
Do you remember when that guy, was it like a
an airline
guy?
attendant?
Like, he did it with a beer, right? He was like, I'm out of here. And I don't know what ended up happening to him, but I remember that story.
He got fired.
Yeah, well... But of all the ways you could go out, getting to take the emergency exit slide while holding a beer, probably the peak of I'm out of here moves by anybody in airplane history. I would love to hear, Buck, from some of the people that were stuck on that Amtrak train for 30 hours. In particular, if you had kids, I'm just thinking about what a hellscape it is. Are we there yet when you are driving and you don't at least you have some sense of when you might be somewhere? You are wildly frustrated if you are stuck for that length of time, no matter who you are. If you have kids and this announcement comes on, I really think you probably lost years of your life. Here's the Amtrak. If you're just getting your car, we were discussing 30 hours-ish of being stranded on an Amtrak train in South Carolina woods. This is what they were saying on the PA system.
So once again, for those of you that are calling the police, we are not holding you hostage. We are giving you all the information in which we have. We are sorry about the inconvenience. As soon as more information is available, we will let you know shortly. Thank you.
For those of you calling the police, we are not holding you hostage.
I have to disagree here, too. If you are in a place and you are not allowed to leave, you are being held hostage. I'm sorry. Like, if you are in a train and they will not allow you to leave the train for 30 hours, you are being held hostage. I don't think they could keep me from leaving the train, Buck. What is the Amtrak ticket taker gonna put you in a chokehold? I mean, how do they keep you?
Also, what if everyone on the train? I mean, this is where you need to sort of go, Les Miserables and take to the streets in en masse,
revolution.
What if you all leave? Yeah.
Yes. Now, walking along the side of a track in a South Carolina swamp, at least it wasn't, July, when it's 98 degrees with 140% humidity. But this is kind of a personal hellscape. I can't stop thinking about how awful this would be.
If they won't let you off the train, are you being held hostage? It's a question some people are asking after this Amtrak auto train was stopped in South Carolina in the woods between stations. And there were 563 passengers on board. And some were calling 911 saying that they were being held hostage. By the way, I think I would have been one of those people. I also think I probably would have kicked out a window or hit an emergency exit because at some point you just freak out. At some point you can't handle it. They ran out of food on the train,
walk?
Obviously.
Yes.
Plus Amtrak food, let's be honest, it's worse than airplane food.
Oh, so no doubt. But am I crazy? Can't you walk from one Amtrak train to another, oftentimes with open air, sometimes between them? One compartment to another? Am I crazy on this? I would think it would be easy to get off the train is what I'm saying.
No. They completely refused, locked everybody in, said you can't go, calling the police saying we can't help you. I just want to know, I mean, can they keep you there for 72 hours without food?
What's the limit?
Can they keep you for a week without food? I mean, what do people have to start passing out and or having, cardiac incidents before they let them off this train? We got Steve in Pennsylvania has got some thoughts on this one. What's up, Steve?
Yes, Clam Buck, Shields High.
Shields High, sir. What's going on?
Well, not to be devil's advocate, but I got to say something because I went through something similar, you can't just let people off the train and have them wandering all over the place. What happens if you run over one of them when a train starts back up? Can you imagine the liability?
I'm just going to say, let me just say something. If you get hit by a train as a pedestrian, I think it's mostly likely going to be your fault. Like, the train is, I'm just going to toss this out there. The train is fairly noticeable, right? Now, maybe if you're, in general, the train does not sneak up on people. Right? Like, I don't remember there's very many times where in my life where I've been like, hey, I was just walking around and I almost got hit by a train. Like, you kind of have to put yourself in a position to get hit by a train. So if you walk off of the train and then you get hit by the train, I think most people on a jury would say it's kind of hard to have sympathy for you if you get hit by a train.
Also, look, I mean, what Steve is bringing up here is true at some level, which is that I'm sure the regulations say there's some danger involved, which is why they won't let you off.
That they are
but
told
the regulations
they can't let you off. Yes.
Right, the regulations are insane. Is our point,
and also
and the liability issue is
30
insane.
Hours of stoppage time.
Can't they also just shut down that portion of track in both directions to allow an exit from the train for everybody? I mean, you would think this wouldn't be that hard to coordinate if they were really so worried. Also, how many trains are really going by at any point in time, right? Like, give it a 30-minute, window where people can detrain and get off this thing. Because it really, I mean, right now it seems that clearly if you're held for over 29 hours is the official estimate here. If you're held for almost 30 hours on a train, there is clearly no upper limit as a matter of regulation established in which they can keep you contained on this thing that, I mean, a lot of trains you can't even open windows.
Yep.
They ran out of food.
I'm just thinking, Buck, this is another marital advice. If you had stayed on the train for 29 hours and 45 minutes, and you are the husband, and you have finally won the argument, let's get off the train, we're never moving. And you get you and your wife and maybe your kids off the train. And then 15 minutes later, the train starts as you are standing on the side of the road. I actually think the husband might need to throw himself in front of the train rather than have to deal for the rest of his life with hearing from his wife, I told you the train was going to start, right? Because the worst thing that you could make the choice is you wait like 29 hours and 45 minutes and you finally say, this is the breaking point. You get off and then the train starts and you're left in the South Carolina wilderness.
I mean, are you familiar with the Roosevelt Island tram in New York City? Do you know about this thing? So it's a cable car, kind of, right? It's like an elevated cable car.
Is this in Spider-Man? I think I might have seen it in a movie.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
It's the thing in Spider-Man, and he has to save the people. That's exactly right. It's a real thing. I used to take it on a regular basis because there are some sports fields and things on Roosevelt Island that I would go to when I lived in New York City. Back in 2006, there were, for hours, dozens of people trapped in that tram, and they had no good way to get them out. I mean, for hours at a time, they were stuck in that tram. And I remember thinking about that. And every time I got on after that, I was thinking about it because enclosed space, rising anxiety, no escape, people freak out.
At least on that tram, you can see your way out. Like, you can see the outer world.
Yes, but Clay, you're elevated over. If the tram falls, everyone's going to die.
But my fear has always been being stuck in an elevator, in like a packed elevator. You know, every now and then people will get stuck in an elevator for like 10 hours. And have you ever stepped into a crowded elevator? I would lose my mind, I think, trapped inside of a elevator because you can't get out, you can't see anything.
One of the stories of Sexton family lore is my little brother was playing sports, and he got hit pretty hard in the face and had to get stitches. And he went home. He had like the bloody bandages and stuff on his face. Went home before he was going to the hospital with my parents. I think he wanted to change his clothing because he was blood soaked. And on his way to the hospital to stop, which is 2 blocks away from where we used to live in New York City, the elevator got stuck between floors.
For how long?
And then I think it was like 15 minutes maybe. Wasn't that long. But he decided, and this is not advised, by the way, they did the slide through.
Climb out.
Climb out while it's between floors, which everybody will tell you is super dangerous because of that elevator.
How you get chopped in half.
That's how you get chopped. So my brother made it. He's obviously okay because
how old
he
was
high school. So he was back in high school. But I remember my parents told me that one, and he decided he was going to go for it. And man, elevators. There's stuff on elevators is that I think there are almost no. There's like 2 instances.
They're very safe.
They're very, very. They have brakes on them. There's like 1 or 2 instances where people, if you stay in the elevator, you're pretty much going to be okay. Like you're going to be good, right? Like 99.999 times out of 100, you're going to be good. So you want to. The moment you like decide you're going to climb out like Keanu Reeves in the movie Speed and get near the cables.
Die hard.
Bad things can happen. So, see, a lot of you out. Look, one thing, claustrophobic. I think everybody is a little claustrophobic. It's just a question of degrees, right? Some people, it's a very extreme fear, but in the wrong circumstances, like I'll tell you that. Do you feel this way? If I see too many people in an elevator and I have the choice, I'm not in a rush, I will always wait. Just because in my head, I'm thinking to myself, if this thing gets stuck, I don't want it to be like sardines in a can. I want some air.
Oh, yes. I mean, I regularly, I'm jinxing myself. I've never been stuck in an elevator. But when I was a freshman in college, we had one of the least reliable elevators I've ever seen, George Washington University. And it was a tiny little sardine can of an elevator. And it would regularly, have all sorts of issues. And ever since then, I have been terrified. You know, Buck, you lived in New York City. Some of those elevators are ancient, right? Like they have been in existence for a long time. And I understand the safety aspects of it every now and then. But the fear of just being locked in there forever. But I want every married man to think about that scenario where I just gave you. You've been arguing for hours. Hey, we got to go. 29 hours and 45 minutes, your wife finally says, you know what? You're right. She's been taking the other side. You get off and 15 minutes later, the train starts. I think every married man on the planet would be thinking, I really want to throw myself in front of this train right now because I'm never going to hear the end of this. And then once the train's gone and you're stuck in the swamp in South Carolina, can you imagine that walk where your wife's like, I told you we should have stayed on the train? How many times do you think that gets told to you as you're struggling along in the South Carolina swamp?
Better hope you have good cell service, too, so you can actually find your way out of there.
Well, do they have the ability to charge anything? That's the other question I had when you're stuck. This is my fear on the airplane. People sometimes, I'll go on the airplane with like 6 newspapers, 3 books in my carry-on because my worst fear is getting stuck on an airplane and not at least having something to read.
I have my backpack laptop bag that I go on every plane and everything with. I treat that thing like a go bag, Clay. I've got additional spare batteries for my phone in there. I've got enough granola bars, gluten-free, of course, to last me like 2 weeks. I mean, I don't leave home without it. I got some beef jerky in there. You name it. I try to make it as much a survival pack as I can, and that's for getting on a Delta flight, from New York.
I used to take those cross-country flights, kind of, because I'm in Nashville, so it's not full cross-country, but to L.A. on Southwest. And Southwest doesn't have, televisions in the seats or anything else. So it's like a 4-hour flight. And every now and then you have somebody sit down next to you, and they have nothing. And I always think to myself, you're on a flight for 4 hours, and you just sit down, and you have, these people, I legitimately wonder what they're thinking.
What is your go-to airplane drink and your go-to airplane snack?
Cranberry juice. I don't know why I always get cranberry juice, but I always get cranberry juice on an airplane. And the snack that I would go with, I love Chex Mix. Like a big bag of Chex Mix that you can get, or that, they'll come around with the little snacks. I'm all in on cranberry juice and Chex Mix. I don't know why, because I don't really eat either of those things anywhere else. But you get me on an airplane, I could survive on cranberry juice and Chex Mix. What about you?
There's some science to why tomato juice is so good on planes because the altitude actually affects the taste of the tomato juice. I know that sounds completely insane, and maybe this is something I saw on TikTok that isn't true, which is really ticking me off these days because there's a lot of really cool things that you find out someone just made up and put on there. But I think that's true about tomato juice, which I do like on planes. I'm a seltzer guy, and I will say, though, I love either roasted peanuts or pistachios. Gets it done every time.
They can't have those anymore.
Oh, because of the...
They've eliminated all peanuts because of peanut allergies. You can't, you used to get the package.
You can do... They give out pistachios.
They don't
still,
kill
for
people?
Sure. No, I don't think pistachios are considered the same in the nut allergy. I don't know. We got parents listening who will know this, who have kids with nut allergies. But I think pistachios are usually okay.
They've eliminated... I used to like the honey nut nuts. Got to be careful. And they did away with that entire thing. You can't get them anymore.